Hello, thank you for taking a look at my newest video. Today we're going to talk about James's collection of walking feet. We have a mix of some authentic Singer ones and some generic brand ones, and there's sort of pros and cons to everything. So, on this side here we have the 160741 Singer Penguin, as we'd often know it. So this is really for straight stitch sewing machines. Then we have a generic brand that I got off the internet for straight stitch, fits a featherweight. In the middle we have the Singer Swiss-made Zig Zagger, which you can use as a walking foot, and I've put it with the Zigzag walking feet. This is a Plaid Matcher walking foot, and then we have another bought off the internet plastic walking foot. And last but not least, I have a Vintage Singer Slant Shank walking foot machine attachment. Now here I have some fabric I've been working on for making a dress. It's horrendous polyester. I bought it off the internet. Big mistake. Disgusting. It was supposed to be very fine weight, but as you can see it's not really quite as fine as I would like. So the reality, it should have been chiffon, and it's sort of like a medium weight, slightly see-through polyester. It's disgusting to sew, which is why I thought I'd use it here as a demonstration of whether or not these walking feet help when you put two layers together. So the first thing I want to talk about is some of the experiences I've had. So here you can see I've just sewn this, and I did this with a standard zigzag foot, just doing straight stitch on my brother Matric sewing machine. Works okay. You can see it's slightly puckered just from the tension on the thread. We could live with it. It's not particularly great. However, it didn't move much. It didn't slide. It did sew in a straight line, and as you can see, just moving the fabric, will straighten it out. So the tension is pretty good. You can't really see the white. So I've done white on the bottom, on the bobbin, black on the top. So I'm going to do all of these on the same machine. This one I can't because it's slant shank. And then we'll talk about it. So, watch this space. Right, so I fit the Singer Vintage Walking Foot on. It comes with its own screw, so you don't generally need another screw. Well, in fact, you don't need another screw for this one. I've got the sewing machine. It only sews in center position for straight stitching, so we've got it there. And I just wanted to show. So this is the wretched fabric, awful stuff to sew, slides like you wouldn't believe. So in some ways this is a good test of one type of sewing. So there's the distinctive noise of the Singer Walking Foot. So I haven't adjusted any of the tension settings from the previous sewing. The one that did a slight pucker when sewing. So what we can see, the tension probably would benefit from being loosened a bit on the top and the bottom. However, on the surface it looks pretty good. So there's the first test. And I've got this on rather a wobbly table here. Now I've lost my scissors. I'm not sure what I did with them. Oh, here they are. So, cut the thread. So, that's test number one. And let's just zoom in here. The results are pretty good. Not very much puckering. So that's a bonus. There's definitely no sliding, which is one of the really important things. So, test number 2. This will surprise everyone, but it was something I found interesting when trying to sew thick things. So what I have here is medium weight cotton. It's like a, in fact it might actually be linen if I remember. No, it's cotton. It's cotton calico. And it's quite thick, reasonably thick. You can see the light through there. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold it over a number of times. Now the reason I've done this is because sometimes you can either use a rolling foot when you're sewing really thick fabrics, or you can use a walking foot. And it's sort of a discussion about which is better. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. That's not very thick. So I think I might fold it from this end and do, there's 4, there's 6, and there's 8. So this is 8 layers of cotton calico. So the theory is what this will help us do is prevent any sliding under the layers. And it doesn't matter whether you're doing this on a straight stitch or like I've got on the Zigzag machine, it's straight, just sewing a straight stitch. So I've got this on a bit of a wobbly table. If it's vibrating, but I apologize. So that's doing pretty well on the whole of pulling all that fabric through. Whether you could do that just as easily with a standard foot is up for discussion. However, it didn't shift, so it kind of worked pretty well, considering it's all piled up there. So that's test number 2. So it works either way, thick, thin. So pretty good results all around. So now what I'll do is I'll change this foot and put on the next one. Okay, so it's easy to take on and off. Here is the internet one, and it needs the thumb screw from the machine, and it hooks on the needle bar, so that's fine. So this is the straight stitch one. It will still work fine on the Zigzag because the teeth on the center and the left hand side match up. So let's sew right next to the previous previous line of stitching, and off we go. So you'll notice it has a distinctive sound, slightly less clicky than the Vintage Walking Foot. Got the thread caught under there, and then off we sew. So it's definitely not it doesn't appear to be shifting the fabric too much, so it's keeping it firm where it should be, and the results are interesting. So let's take a look at what happens, what I hate about this fabric. So there are the 2 lines of stitching. This is the Vintage, this is the plastic walking foot off the internet, and the results are reasonably good. So very similar quality of stitching, pretty good on the whole. But what you might notice is I have not adjusted the stitch at all, and you'll notice with the Vintage Singer one, it's a longer stitch. Ignore the oil from the sewing machine I was fixing the other day. It's actually a longer stitch than with this walking foot. So I haven't adjusted the thing, so it's definitely not working perfectly. So that's an interesting discovery. Okay, let's try the thick stuff. This is where I found these this foot to be least good, unfortunately. If you're doing something really thick, it tends to collapse. But I've fixed it with a pair of pliers the other day. Oh, it just came off. So that's one thing I found. If you need it to sew leather or anything like that, this foot is completely useless. And I found that a lot. Any pressure whatsoever, and it just pops off. That seems to be the theme with these feet. So you can sew your thin stuff, silk, whatever, it works okay, but as you see, the stitch length is affected with this walking foot. So, it's an improvement over, I suppose, not having a walking foot, but this is what I discovered with all of these walking feet. If you do anything thick, it just explodes. This does not happen with the Vintage Singer ones. Okay. Next. Here we have the Swiss Zig Zagger. Okay. And I've turned the zigzag off, and so now it should be okay to use as a walking foot. Okay. There we go. On there tight. Through the slice. So, row number 3. Hold the threads, and off we go. Okay, so let's talk about that. So what you can see is it's sewed, however, it's puckered the fabric. I'm not thrilled about this one as a walking foot, to be perfectly honest. I think it might work for certain things, but I don't find it very good. What you'll also notice is that the stitch is even smaller. So that's not really very exciting. So that's set on the maximum stitch, and it's not really giving us what we need. So wouldn't recommend that one really very much at all as a walking foot. Maybe on something really thick, but it seems to reduce the length of your stitch. Okay. Plaid Matcher. Now I got this one particularly because I thought it might have been, being all metal, the closest to the penguin. Because it's likely to, it doesn't have the teeth to grab silk and stuff, so I thought it might actually be quite good. I've got the arm here, and put that over top of that, put it up there. Okay, and so make sure it's on there good and tight. So the theory, so off we go. So, Plaid Matcher. Okay. So I would have thought, personally, that would have moved a bit, but it seems to just go up and down, which I'm not sure how that's benefiting us at all. But it does appear to be dragging the fabric through a bit. So it does walk on its own, or it does make it through on its own. Okay. So let's take a look. So we're closer now to the original stitch. It certainly worked pretty good. Doesn't appear to have dragged the fabric much. It's sewn a pretty good straight stitch, so actually that one seems better. Right? Let's try it on the thick. Snip the threads. Okay, so off we go. Let's see what happens on the thick. So. Okay, that one definitely sewed. The stitch length is the same as the other one. Can't say it's wildly straight, so which could be just it does seem to have deviated all over the place, which is what I did notice when I used it before on thick fabrics. It's really hard to keep straight. I have no idea why, but it does seem to do that. However, it does work. So whether it's just my sewing ability or something inherent with the slippery design, I think it's probably better for padding, but the stitching is definitely, not that I didn't wobble with the penguin itself, but it's like all over the place. So discuss. However, that one's a little more of a success. Okay. And last but not least, on this machine, so here we have another, this is the Zigzag equivalent of the straight stitch. And again, so it's got lots of grip, should sew extremely well. So it's pulling the fabric through, I think, quite well. Let's take a look. Oops. Okay, so we are... Okay. So my first comment is the stitching is no longer perfectly straight on that one. It was straight on every other one, but on this one it's got a slight bend to it. That's very odd, I'm not sure why, so that means it mustn't be feeding perfectly straight. So, but the stitch length is kind of what we expect it to be. Okay. Though none of them was as good as the penguin, which I wouldn't have the foggiest about why that would be. But it is definitely not straight stitching. Okay, interesting. So there are the 5 examples. Right, you can see that one is definitely crooked. Don't know why, don't think it, couldn't tell you why. Okay, thick time. Alright. So here we go. So we've got this on, and it won't let me actually put the foot down. So that's a total no-go. It's interfering somehow with the needle. Ooh, wait. I managed to get it. I've repaired this one with a really tough pliers because it popped off that time. So it's kind of working. Ooh, not making very healthy noises. So I worry about this one popping off again, but it does seem that the repair I made to it with pair of pliers helped. Although it's not sitting straight on the needle bar anymore, it seems to have twisted slightly under the weight of the fabric. So, discuss. It did actually help it walk through, and it's pretty good for keeping the stitching relatively straight. So it's kind of okay, but I wouldn't want to have to do much sewing like that because it feels like it's going to collapse anytime, and I know this one has collapsed a lot. So there's that one. So now I'm going to switch machines because obviously a slant shank machine, this is not. So I need to put, there's the foot back, I need to put the thread up the slant shank machine and put the foot on, and I'll be right back. Okay, so here we are on my Singer 411G slant shank. Now I got this foot with my Singer 403, which I sold, and it went to someone for a Christmas present last year. I loved my 403. I thought it was a really good machine, and I'm very pleased to have this as well. It's different, but it works very well. But I got this for chain stitching and because you can treadle it. I have just yesterday taken it off the treadle because I wanted to test it on some really heavy fabric. But now I've fitted the walking foot, and we're going to do a test on here. So hopefully, just check tension. Oops. So the bobbin's a bit loose. Should have checked that at the beginning. Okay, that actually is an awful result. So I don't know what I've done there. I think something must not be set right, because this is by all means my preferred foot. I use this when I sew really difficult fabrics, and it gives just perfect results. Let me see if I'm just having a moment. I think it's the needle. That was an excellent demonstration, wasn't it? I've got the wrong size needle in here. Well, that was a crappy demo, wasn't it? Well, the reality is I'm going to have to figure out what I've done wrong. But this is by every means, when I have to do really difficult to sew fabric, I find these slant shank machines really, really good, and in particular this walking foot, extraordinary. I wonder if my tension is wrong on my pressure foot. Yeah, that's better. Okay, let me try one again. Oh yes, that's a little better, so let's try again. Yeah, that's a little better. Not a perfectly straight stitch, which surprises me a bit, so something must still be not properly adjusted. So I'll check that, that's my fault. But normally this machine is absolutely spot on, and this walking foot is really good. It's tough, it's built much heavier than the other one for some reason, but if you look, that's the stitching on the outside. So it's slightly imperfect, but it's okay. It's better, so it must be the pressure foot the pressure on the foot's not quite perfectly adjusted, but it's pretty good now. So I'm going to do another test on this heavy fabric, and let's loosen that because now it's too tight. Ooh. So as you can see, this one works fine on heavy fabric. So it's just my adjustments are not right for sewing, but this one works really well. As you can see, it's perfectly sewn and straight. So I think this is actually my preferred walking foot. If I'd have to do stuff which needs adjusting, I generally use this machine. So I think I need to, I adjusted the pressure the other day. Or I rebuilt this the other day and I don't think it's quite adjusted right. But it works. So there's a good machine. And I'm pleased with it. I think this is my preferred walking foot, really. It really works well. So anyway, thank you very much.